Hey everyone, this is Gabby
and KARIM,
and you're listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Halad to Health.
Tune in each week to hear us talk about the journey of getting into med school.
From GAMSAT to medical interviews, get the insider scoop from med students who have done it all before. So stay tuned and get ready to get med ready.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the MMI mini-series. Before we get started, I'd like to make an acknowledgement to country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I am recording this podcast today. For me personally, that is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, as well as any First Nations people who might be listening to our podcast today. So today we have an exciting station. It's an ethics station. In terms of difficulty, it's quite a difficult station with lots of difficult ethics to discuss. In terms of timing, there is 2-minute reading and 2 minutes per question. The student today is Sarah and the examiner is myself, and the station is as follows. A group of medical students have decided to attend a Black Lives Matter protest in Melbourne CBD. You believe this is an important issue and wish to attend. However, due to the current pandemic and stage 4 restrictions in Melbourne, the protest is classified as a legal activity. The first question is, what would you do in this situation?
So first of all, I want to address the fact that this is quite a difficult situation to be in, because on one hand, I do really believe that these type of protest and movements towards human rights and equality has really shaped the society that we are in today. So I do think it's very important to understand that whoever wants to attend these types of events should get to, essentially, because it is at the end of the day, it's the right of the individual, and we are allowed to speak up about issues that we deem are important. However, that being said, if I do attend this event, in a way, I would consider myself to be a bit like selfish almost, just because I think I would be causing harm to the community in a way, because like at the time these protests were done, I was working at a lab which did critical research on different conditions, and if I were to attend this event and then somehow be exposed to COVID, which was quite possible given the situation, I would be taking that back and not only affecting myself and also putting myself at risk, but also putting everyone else in that lab at risk as well. And I would also have to consider the fact that I still live with my mom and dad, and they are significantly older than me, obviously, and they have medical conditions. So I would also be putting them at risk, and they didn't really get a say in whether or not they would be exposed to this condition, and it would all be because of what I would do. So in a way, I would be protecting what I would like what decision I would take, but at the same time, I would be putting so much more people at risk and then putting them in harm's way. So considering all of this stuff, I would probably, for me personally, I would not attend the protest. But I would definitely support this movement in other ways, such as through online platforms. I think these days it's quite easy to speak up and really make an impact, even without attending in person and causing chaos when we're not supposed to. So I would not, personally for me, I would not attend this event.
Okay, and what would you say to your friends who are thinking of going?
So again, highlighting the fact that each individual would have a right to attend if they did want to. However, that being said, I would really try to, like, coming from a background of public health as well, I think I would have, considering whoever the friends are, especially if they don't really have a background in public health, I would definitely try to explain to them the kind of harm that they could be causing by this event. I would obviously try to be very empathetic, because obviously I don't want to come off as, I know better than you are about the situation, because I probably won't. But at the same time, sorry, I mean, like, as in, I don't want to come across that way. So I would definitely try to explain to them, like, yes, you would be supporting this, and I understand completely where you're coming from. And I would also try to relate to them and say that, you know, I'm a person of color. Like, I understand what people go through to a certain extent as well. And I'll try to really emphasize that I understand the situation and I understand that it's important, but I would emphasize that there's better ways to deal with the situation, given the situation that we're in right now. And I would really try to make them understand that you're putting your parents at risk, you're putting your loved ones at risk, and come on, like, let's do this in another way where we could protect ourselves but also make an impact on the society.
Okay. In what other ways could you advocate for minority groups?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot of ways that I can think of off the top of my head. This would include, well, I'm assuming this is during the lockdown period. Yeah, so I would definitely say through online platforms for sure. So I know there's Facebook groups about different communities, and there's also different charities and social groups that you could potentially get involved in. You can also sign petitions about certain events and what you believe is right. Sorry, I'm not too informed. I have to admit, I'm not too informed on these particular groups and stuff. But that being said, I can definitely talk to other people who know a lot better than me about these things. There's a lot of people online who freely advocate these things, including my own friends. So I would definitely talk to them, and also to other authoritative figures about which way I could potentially go in making this difference. I think it's mainly through those platforms, but I also think just talking to people who are encountering these difficulties would also be a good way to understand what they particularly need help with, and therefore really understand what things would make the most impact in that community. I think often we kind of tend to forget that we should really be talking to the people affected rather than just going and saying this is wrong. I think that could also be really helpful.
Okay, and what is the role of doctors and medical students in advocating for minority groups?
Yeah, so I think in medicine, I think equality of care, I guess, is quite important, and it falls right under justice in fact. So I think at a national level, so to speak, they can definitely like, you know, I guess it's probably if you have a lot of seniority, but you could talk to like, you know, policymakers or like certain health programs and stuff, and you can talk about, you know, like, for example, with I know with but this is not really about, I guess that's still about race actually. So like with Aboriginals, I know that a lot of the times we don't tend to accept their practices in terms of medical practices as well into our westernized view of medicine. And I think that without making a clear distinction between them, I think at the same time respecting that and really incorporating that into the care as well, because at the end of the day, we want what's best for our patients. That should really be the goal. So if they feel that they could benefit from something else than what we have to offer, we should really look at that as well. I think apart from that, yeah, at the national level, it's more about policy making, I would say. So you can really do those types of things, and you can also obviously raise awareness at a more, I guess, a social level, to speak, like a community level. You could also hold seminars about different practices of different people or different beliefs or religions or whatever there is, to raise awareness about these issues. And you could also at an individual level, you can do a huge, I would say you could actually play a really huge role, because accept each patient's for who they are and really try to understand where they're coming from. They may have read something wrong. Don't judge them based on it.
All right,
But,
so
yeah.
so that's time. No, that was amazing. That was great. You did so well. We'll go through how you think you went first. So tell me about your overall station. How do you feel the whole thing went?
I don't really know. I think I did okay, hopefully. But yeah, I thought I was rambling a bit at some points. I may have been repeating some things because in my head I was like, oh, what's the next point? What's the next point? But yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you think you could improve?
Probably timing and structure, which is something I've been working on as well. But obviously, like sometimes questions are thrown at you and you're just like, it might not be like an obvious structure right off the bat. So
Yeah. No, I thought you did really, really well. Overall, yeah, I think the one thing you could probably improve on is structure, and really this idea of highlighting what it is you want to say before you say it.
yeah.
So sort of prefacing what it is you want to talk about and then expanding into that point. It actually helps the listener sort of understand what it is you're trying to say and follow along much better because they've already formed an opinion in their mind of where it is you're going to go. So they're all just like, yes. They're sort of following along as you're talking, essentially.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably
Sorry, so for like the first question, for example, should I right off the bat say like I wouldn't go and then say why I wouldn't go? But
yeah.
Okay.
Or you could, so some of the things I had written down, I mean, you wanted to talk about some of the emotional stakes that are involved. So you could say, obviously different medical students are going to have different emotions and experiences are felt regarding this protest. So you could start off by prefacing that and then expanding into what you mean. So you could say medical students come from various different backgrounds and they may have been affected by some of these issues in their life. And so they might feel very strongly about it and, expand into it. If you want to talk about the right for freedom of speech, you could just say each individual has a right for the freedom of speech. If you wish to attend that event, you're an adult and that is your decision to make, right? If you want to talk about consequences, you could say, however, we need to keep in mind that there may be some consequences involved, such as, and then expand into that point. So saying what it is you want to talk about and then expanding into it just helps the flow of your structure sound a bit better. Yeah, I think this is one of those stations that doesn't really fit that much into like the ethical pillars of medicine that much. Like not really. It's a little bit about justice, a little bit about like autonomy, but it doesn't really fit into like a patient perspective so much. It's about more like individual choices, essentially. So, I mean, I thought you handled the first question really well. Like that'd just be my one piece of feedback is try to preface what it is you want to say and then expand into it. For the second question, what would you say to your friends who are thinking of going? I think you handled this really, really well and you hit all the key points, which is that you start off with empathy, you listen to their opinion, you acknowledge their point of view, but then you also ensure that they understand the consequences and risks involved in terms of a public health point of view. There's one little thing I would like to add in there is that, thinking about their role as medical students, as healthcare professionals, how that might affect public image and public trust in healthcare advice given by the government. That would just add a little bit more complexity into your answer. And that sort of continues on in other questions. You could sort of come back to that theme of public perception. So for question number 3, in what other ways could you advocate for minority groups? I really loved your answer here. I literally wrote down awesome answer. I really liked how you hit individual, that's all right. I really liked how you hit individual, community and government approach. So thinking about how you can advocate for minority groups through individuals, like just talking to people, understanding their perspective. I liked how you talked about, what you could do in the community. So as a medical student, could you seek out some of these advocacy groups and asking how as a medical student you could support them or help them or volunteer for them, whatever it might be. Government approach, like you said, when you take a more senior sort of position, you sort of talked about that in the next question, but like you talked about, you know, how you can take more of a senior position, and, you know, reach out to policymakers, etc. So like really, you really thought big picture for these two questions. I really like that. So very much similar advice for question number 4. I really liked your response there. How you talked big picture, you took like the individual government community approach as well. The only other things I would add are, you know, with these really big picture questions, it's important to reflect on how the healthcare system has impacted these minority groups in the past and how it's changing for the future, right? So we need to consider our previous history in the way that we've treated minority groups in the past, and that there could be some mistrust between minority groups and the healthcare system due to past injustices. And that we now have this obligation, because we are aware of our previous mistakes, we now have this obligation to rectify some of those mistakes. Well, not even rectify them, but openly, you know, acknowledging the mistakes that we've made, and to make strides to improve healthcare outcomes of these communities. You know, so from a community perspective, that's something you really could have focused on. Because, you know, from an individual, like I'd love to improve their healthcare outcomes and make sure they're taken care of. From a community perspective, you know, we really have an obligation to our patients, to make sure that they're receiving the best possible healthcare, and that they feel culturally safe, for example. That's something you could have talked about. But the thing I really loved about your answer is that you said that we need to do this by getting advice from these minority groups and always working with them. That was probably my favorite thing about your answer, is that you acknowledge that we can't just tell, you know, minority groups what to do, as we've done in the past. We need to work with them. So they need to be in leadership positions that allow them to make effective decisions that best help their communities, because they know best about what they need. Well, there you have it. That's the end of that episode. Hopefully you guys found something useful out of that ethics station. It's obviously quite a challenging ethics station, and there are a lot of different points that you can discuss. We are running some mock MMIs with medical students that you guys might be interested in. So we're running them over the next several weeks of September. You can sign up online via the Halad website. So it's haladtohealth.org. They're a really useful resource. You can get live feedback, and it's a really great opportunity to improve your communication skills and practice these MMIs. But thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Making of an Incredible MD podcast by Halad to Health. Please like, share, and subscribe to help spread the word about our podcast. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So send us an email or message on Facebook. All of our links are in the show notes. Thanks. We'll see you next time.